We're glad to be with you as we're over halfway through the 2026 legislative session. For those that have not met me yet, my name is Nicole Sting. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the legislative director for the League of Oregon Cities. Before we begin, I want to walk you through just what to expect in the webinar. I know this is our third one, but important considerations. If you're welcome to ask questions as you go, there is a Q&A feature that staff will be monitoring during the conversation, and it's a great place to put in questions. We'll go through those questions first, and at the very end, as there is time, we'll open it up to live questions. There's a lot moving this legislative session. We want to make sure you're getting the information to you, and then we'll have a chance for more of a dialogue and discussion. So you're welcome to use that FAQ feature along the way and wait till the end for live questions. And before we begin to updates, just a bit of context for where we are in the legislative session. We're on the third of 5-ish weeks of a legislative session. This is the 35-day short session. It moves very quickly, and we're seeing that come to life with evening floors beginning and multiple floor sessions a day expected for the remainder of the legislative session. There's a lot of bills that are now made their way to the Ways and Means Committee. That is the legislative committee that deals with budget expenditures. So a lot of what we'll talk about today are bills that are sitting in Ways and Means that might not receive further action or might pass and ultimately be signed into law. Now, we've talked quite a bit with this group about the context of this legislative session. I want to point your attention to two gentlemen here walking to indicate that we did see our first walkout of this legislative session occur on Wednesday. It was short-lived. It was only for the afternoon session and only on the Senate side. By Thursday, senators were back on the floor and voting on bills. And as I speak, I have the Senate floor up. Folks are moving forward and voting on bills. We anticipate the temperature of the session to come down considerably once Senate Bill 1599 finishes its course, and we'll talk more about that bill at another moment. In addition, we're waiting closely to understand what happens with the budget process. As you may recall, the legislature is facing a fairly large deficit to meet service needs in this legislative session for this biennium. So they will be balancing those needs, and we'll be hopefully seeing those budgets come out in the coming week. Not much more to report on the budget. But before we dive into updates, we have some key action alerts for our membership. So we'll turn right over there, and Scott Winkles is here to take the first action alert and assignment.
Okay, so lots happening on transient lodging tax this week. So there's news. I think it is the bill that came out of the House Revenue is an improvement over the current situation. Currently, if your transient lodging tax was passed prior to 2003, 70% of that revenue must go to tourism promotion. 30% may be used by the local government for funding of services. The bill that was introduced with the support of the league this session would have flipped that percentage to 60-40. So 60% would be able to be used for governmental services and 40% for tourism promotion. What came out of House Revenue was a 50-50 split, as well as some reporting requirements. And so I think we're still in a position of, it's an improvement. I think this is where the votes line up. If you have not talked to your legislators about this, then we would encourage you to do so. This is still a win. I think we've talked to some of our cities that have been active on this, and 50% is certainly an improvement over the current scenario. I think there will be an opportunity to revisit this a few years down the line when some reporting requirements will take place. The LPRO, or the legislative staff office, the legislative revenue office, actually would be doing a report to look at the efficacy of these expenditures and impacts on local governments, and that'll happen in, I believe, I think it's in 2029. So certainly move forward. We certainly improved the split had a lot of fierce opposition from the lodging and the hospitality and the travel industry on this one, but that's where we're at. We've got a one pager on this bill, needs to be updated to reflect the amendment. Um, but uh, this is I think this is the likely outcome. And this one gets a little more complicated. So we had a hearing this week and work session on the three bills listed on the slide. So that's 4161. That exempts food and beverage from the prohibited use of office statute. That bill sailed out of committee. It's headed to the floor. 4159, and that requires that the governor's appointee have local government experience. I think we anticipate that at least the big four local government associations would have some consultation with the governor's office on who that person might be. Um, uh, I think we'd like to have a city attorney on there. That's always when we've had city attorneys on the OGEC, we just talk less about these ethics issues, and so that would be our plan. Complicating the complicated bill on this list is 4177. 4177 is the one that fixes some of the issues we've had with 2805 passed in 2023. This is the serial meetings issue. There was some really unfortunate testimony on the bill. I think the OGEC executive director testified that this bill would allow some conduct that occurred, the conduct that actually caused 2805 to pass. That was a school board meeting in secret uh, to decide to hire an attorney. The executive director of the OGEC said conduct would be allowed under this bill. That is a profound misunderstanding of the facts of that case. Prior to 2805, the only way people had to get redress for an open meetings violation was to take them to court. That's what parties did. The conduct, the ruling on that case was very clear that they deliberated, decided, and conspired and intentionally circumvented the open meeting law. So what we're talking about is allowing people to gather information. Deliberations, decisions, those would still have to be made in public. This is fairly consistent to where our understanding of where the public meetings law had been for some time. It's reflective of the Handy decision. All we're saying is that if you gather information, you can have a conversation about what information. You can ask for briefing books. You can ask for fact-finding data, that sort of thing, without running afoul of a serial meetings of those communications accumulating into a serial meetings violation. But deliberations, very clear, have to be in public. I think the bill got out of committee. It went to Ways and Means. There's not a number on the fiscal, but I think we still have some conversations and some work to do. So if you haven't talked to your legislators about 4177, please do so. I think, we've seen some press coverage on this that's been, I do take some issue with it, but they haven't called me for a quote. Yet I would say that media was part of the work group that was invited to participate in this group. The Society for Professional Journalists were part of the work group. You know, if you don't show up to a work group and you're invited, it's hard to complain about the outcome or complain about a process that the party wasn't in attendance for. So that's where we're at. Important bill. I think this fixes a lot of our challenges. It's by no means the last conversation we need to have about open meetings law, executive sessions in general, or the OGEC statutes in general. But it's an important bill, and we ask that you move forward, that you contact your legislators and tell your story about how this has impacted your ability to coordinate logistics and information and relationships. So
Thanks.
that's me, and I will turn that over to Michael.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. So we have another assignment action alert for you. So Senate Bill 1585, this is the bill that would lower the grant match requirement for cities with a population of 20,000 or fewer. It impacts 7 key programs. You can see those on the slide. But we just heard from the Speaker's office that it was assigned to the House Commerce and Consumer Protection Committee, which meets on Tuesday at 1 p.m. So that should be open to submit written testimony, but encouraging you to reach out to your legislator, tell them you support this. With movement in the Senate, this bill passed on very strong bipartisan support, 25-3. I think it also brought up good questions about all cities and how we might be able to shape those conversations going forward as infrastructure continues to be a top issue for us. So if you have any questions, please reach out, but do reach out to your legislator. We believe this bill, which passed out of the House last session, 48-1, when it was much more broader and impacted all infrastructure programs, really has a strong possibility of passing, but we need you to reach out to your legislators. So thank you.
Hey folks, sorry about the slides moving around. I think we're getting it to the right place now. We'll go ahead and bring back up those assignments at the end of the conversation, but for now we'll walk through the remainder of the legislative updates by policy portfolio area, starting here with transportation. House Bill 4007 is the Senate, essentially the House Transportation Omnibus Bill. It includes a couple key components. What we care about most as cities is the regulation of micromobility devices. I'm seeing a question in the chat that I will answer live. There were some conversations about using this bill as a vehicle to divert local funding to fill ODOT's budget holes. Specifically, the legislature was considering 2 amendments, one that would have taken out the Safe Routes to School fund instead of from the full state highway fund to just the local government portion of the state highway fund. That amendment was not adopted. That amendment was paired with another amendment that the committee decided not to adopt. That was an amendment to lift the requirement that localities take gas tax increases to their voters. So there's certainly some conversations from Representative Evans about redirecting local funds from the state highway fund to the overall state transportation budget to support ODOT. That did not occur. So we're grateful to say that what is in House Bill 4007, cities are mostly neutral on, though we're excited to see regulation of micro mobility devices. That might come back up as we get to the ODOT budget part of the legislative session. That's expected to begin in earnest really next week, though we have had a hearing on that in the previous week. We'll continue to show up in partnership with the Association of Oregon Counties to amplify how important the state highway fund resources are to cities and to the operations of your roads. So good news there on House Bill 4007. I know a number of you responded to action alerts over last weekend. We're not expecting any action alerts on this one now, but much appreciation for those that did engage. In addition, a few other bills moved out of the House Transportation Committee. Both of these are, actually all 3 of these are in Ways and Means. That's House Bill 4008, which creates a transit funding task force. There will be 2 city representatives, one from the city of Portland and 1 general city representation. And then House Bill 4126 created a study to understand the total cost of roads. It's about a $800,000 study, so that bill is now in Ways and Means for further consideration. Now, at the top of our presentation today, I mentioned Senate Bill 1599. You may recall this moves the date of the referendum currently scheduled for the November ballot on the gas tax increases and other transportation revenue increases that were included and passed during the October special session. Now that bill, I'm double timing a little bit, that bill is expected up next on the Senate floor. We don't have clarity whether or not that bill has the votes needed to move forward. If it does move forward, it will then go to the House for consideration. The Secretary of State has set a deadline of February 25th for the legislature to opine on whether or not the ballot date should be moved from the November ballot to the May ballot. So certainly more to come on that. This is the hot button issue right now in transportation, and we'll be watching that closely. Up next is finance and revenue. I have a quick update before just reminding you about the transient lodging tax you just heard about. We presented on what ended up in the federal disconnect package. I want to share that passed the House floor and passed the Senate floor and is actually headed to the House floor next week. So that package is moving forward at a fairly rapid pace along party lines. And then the last finance and revenue update for you today is that, again, that reminder on your assignment, your action alert to continue to contact your legislators regarding the local act, House Bill 4148. And I'm not seeing any questions related to finance or revenue in our QA feature, so I will go ahead and move it over to general government updates. And Greg, I believe this slide is mostly yours.
Yep, I believe you're correct. Good afternoon, everybody. Greg Miller, league lobbyist that focuses on energy, environment, public contracting issues. House Bill 476A is a great example of how things move from benign and de minimis to significant in a hurry. The bill was introduced as a study bill for the Oregon Department of Energy to study energy. Those are what we call placeholder bills, and it was gut and stuffed late last week with an amendment that allows an energy generation project to be cited when the Energy Facility Siting Council deems that local land use and energy facility siting goals are largely met, but exempts the process from the specific process, those projects. The original bill did not include local governments. It was really focused on FSEC projects. But through the course of the conversation in the committee, there were some members that thought that this was appropriate to trickle down to counties and cities that have permitted large energy generating projects in their cities and counties. Currently working on an amendment to that with our friends at AOC. So there's more to come on that bill. Just moved out of the House this morning, so we'll be scheduled at some point next week for a hearing over on the Senate side where they'll discuss the amendments more. Senate Bill 1593A is another bill that we're continuing to work on in the latter days of the session that validates liability waivers for operators of recreational fitness, any other industry that would require a waiver. There's another bill, 1517, is essentially the same bill, but was produced by the Oregon trial lawyers, and it has so many exclusions and exemptions that it hurts Oregon's industry and the market in which we get liability insurance. Providers have been leaving the state because Oregon's questions about liability waivers, and passing Senate Bill 1517 would only exacerbate the problem of insurers leaving the state. I touched base with Senator Mark Meek this morning. Senate Bill 1593 came out of his committee, expressed our continued support for that bill. Also reached out to all of the members of the Senate Rules Committee, where Senate Bill 1593A is currently sitting, to express our continued support. Requested a public hearing and possible work session on that bill next week to keep that alive. Finally on this list, House Bill 4089A, the -4 amendment to that bill was adopted Monday, which definitively excludes cities and local governments from being caught up in the additional penalties related to the licensure and labor issues that they're seeking to address. The bill is up for a hearing in the House Rules Committee next week. We'll watch that just to make sure nothing goes sideways. But as of now, cities should be clear of any impacts from House Bill 4089. Next slide, please. House Bill 4055, we noted last week, died in committee. LOC caught up with the proponents of the bill this week. We do understand the need for this. Also caught up with the chair of the Joint Information Management Technology Committee this week, Representative Nancy Nathanton, to express our interest in working with her during the interim. on this bill. There are reasons for it. We just want to make sure that it doesn't get implemented in a way that impacts cities in their most vulnerable moments dealing with cybersecurity incidents. Senate Bill 1526, the Forge Act, essentially sets up a green bank to get green projects, green energy generation projects off the ground. That bill was also moved to Ways and Means this week. Sets up a fund. It doesn't require any state general fund dollars, but it sets up a fund. So, quote unquote, it needs to go to Ways and Means for some technical reasons. But don't anticipate any issues with that bill passing. Those are the bills that I'm tracking at this point in the session that are worth noting. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Not seeing
And
any
I don't see
questions
any,
in
so
the
thank you,
chat.
everybody.
Great. Alexandra.
Hi folks, slightly different setup today, so not as quick on the draw with the camera on and unmute buttons. For those of you I've not met before, I'm Alexandra Ring. I'm our housing and land use lobbyist. I have pretty minimal updates for you today. I think housing has been, I'm going to say this lightly, relatively quiet this session. HB 4037, which is kind of the one with the largest impact to cities, it has some changes regarding how cities can notice and when they can have public hearings for housing developments, passed through the House. If you have not looked at the -10, I will still plug, please read the -10. There's minimal changes we could make at this point, but it really has minimized the impact compared to the base bill. HB 4035, which is one-time UGB expansions and just kind of general program update, and 4082 are both up for hearings in the Senate next week on Tuesday. Tune in. I will be presenting on at least one, if not both of those. It'll be a fun day for us in the Senate. And then just the reminder on the non-contiguous annexation bill now only applies to the city of Eugene. So if you've been tracking that one, go ahead and let it go on. Then 1586, Senator Solomon's Jobs Act. We are supporting this one. It now does not have anything related to E-zones. It's really focused exclusively on the R&D tax credit and some land use kind of changes for the city of Hillsborough, as well as the statewide permitting council. That will have its final public hearing with any luck on the Senate side, followed by its work session, hopefully on Monday. And then HB 4084, which is Governor Kotek's prosperity roadmap package that has the same kind of like permitting council stuff, but also still contains some E-zone changes. Finally passed out of the House committee. It had some final changes to make sure we're really enshrining local control there. It, is very much, making its way through the process. So we're happy to see those final changes. I see a question in the chat from Ryan Nolan from the city of Red River about 4084 or 4082. That follows the same process that is in statute for 1537. So it does allow for public hearings. It's just that you're looking at kind of a snapshot of the statute rather than the whole statute that pertains to that bill. 1586, I think, we've seen a lot of opposition testimony on that one. It really is, it seems that removal of the E-zones portion, removal of the portions related to like anything that could be about data centers, things like that, has really kind of eased its way. We're still seeing large scale support from the legislature of that one and of the governor's package. I think while there have been increasing conversations about data centers and what is the other word I'm looking for? Large scale like cryptocurrency mining operations, things like that. It doesn't really seem to be impacting the legislation. Either for 1586 or 4084. On the land use consideration, I think yes and no. I think if they had done it as a standalone, would probably be a different situation. The legislature seems to have kind of an increasing distaste for standalone UGB expansions of any kind. They're really looking for those to go through processes rather than just being kind of one times. And they're more than happy to set up a new process for one times, but they want it to go through a process rather than through the legislature. Uh, we'll just go along with more e-zone questions. Yes, the e-zone provisions of 4084 do continue with kind of the expanded eligibility. There have been some changes made to like long-term monitoring and things like that, just to make sure that we're making sure that these continue to work for our jurisdictions. Regarding, I think, wage gain versus jobs, like all of those kinds of things have moved around in the outside, but really that core expansion of eligibility has remained. And I will put my contact information in the chat for folks who have further questions on just UGB expansions, anything in general, FDEV bills.
Thanks, Alexandra. And before we move on from this, I do want to uplift the comment or the question rather regarding Senate Bill 1586 and the likelihood of its passing. This is an incredibly bipartisan bill. It has a good number of senators and members of the House signed on to it. And notably, it has the Senate Minority Leader signed on. This morning, he gave a remonstrance on the Senate floor urging his colleagues to take action. The bill is up for another public hearing and a possible work session in the Revenue Committee, the Senate Revenue Committee, on Monday. So for cities that support this bill that have not yet submitted testimony, we encourage you to do so. To date, LOC has signed up for every public hearing and has yet to have the opportunity to speak in favor of the bill, though we do have a letter on the record in support. I say that to say if you want to sign up to testify, you're welcome to. We always encourage member engagement in the legislature, and they might not get to you, so we encourage written testimony as well. All right, and with that, we have what is our last update of the webinar. I will pass things back over to Michael.
Great, thank you, Nicole. Just want to give you a brief update. Water Professionals Appreciation Week. This bill would establish that for the first week of October. Last night, it passed out of the Senate Natural Resources and Wildfire Committee. So we don't anticipate any issues with this bill. And I just want to remind everyone, one of the main reasons of this bill, not only just to recognize water professionals that do this work, is we want to have an ability to frame conversations as we go forward in future biennia. So this is an opportunity when this week is established, build those relationships with your legislators, talk to them about the importance of having qualified drinking water, wastewater operators, etc. And, this will be something that, we hope is supported going forward. So thanks everyone who took time to write in and testify in support of this. Second, I think I'll just reemphasize, we do have an assignment and action. The grant matching bill, Senate Bill 1585, was assigned to a House committee. We anticipate that hearing is going to be at 1 p.m. on next Tuesday. And as soon as that's posted, we want people to submit testimony. But in the meantime, you can reach out to your state representative in the House and encourage them to support this if it would impact your city. Again, this is city's population 20,000 and fewer. That's about 88% of our members. But write in, say this is important. It passed on strong bipartisan support last year in the House, and we hope that it will do so again. Lastly, House Bill 4030, this would have amended the RMA in a way that would very negatively impact our members in terms of being able to cost requirements with recycling. And so this bill had been pulled to House rules. And I think it's a good reminder that, nothing is dead until that last gavel and sine die. But we don't anticipate this conversation going away in future biennia. But we put a letter of opposition on the record along with AOC, our counties, and Aura. So thank you for that partnership there. And then lastly, House Bill 4144. This basically this prohibits covered producers from selling, distributing batteries, any battery containing products unless they participate in a producer responsibility organization. So this bill has a hearing in Ways and Means next week. We put a logo on support of this. There's a big coalition, and that is the update that I have for you.
Thanks, Michael. And there's been quite a few comments in the Q&A feature, questions in the Q&A feature. You're welcome to continue to do that. Before we open it up to questions, I do want to just do a quick recap of your assignment. These are action alerts that were in the bulletin, so you're welcome to take a look there. But also to remind you here, there's 2 bills we're asking you to contact your legislators in support of. That's House Bill 4177 and House Bill 4148. In addition, for the upcoming public hearing for Senate Bill 1585, we're looking for more folks to provide testimony. Please reach out to Michael if you do wish to engage. And with that, I am not seeing any questions come through the chat. I'm going to just quickly for a moment remind you of your LOC lobby team. If anyone has any live questions, you are welcome to raise your hand if you'd like to ask those. I am not seeing any hands raised or any questions in the chat. We'll give it a bit more time here, but if you're thinking of it, if you're not sure, you're ready to formulate that question, feel free to jot down either a number or an email from your LOC lobby team. We're happy to connect with you during this call or afterwards. All right, I see a hand. Dan, I'm going to unmute you now.
Oh, there, I think I figured it out.
Yes, hello, we can hear you.
Hi, I'm Diana. So I represent city and county public sector clients throughout Oregon. And Greg, I would like to contact you offline regarding House Bill 4005, the Water Professional Appreciation Week. I hadn't heard of that. I haven't read it yet. I'd like to read it. And then I might have some, quote, labor implication questions for you. So that was it. Just giving you a heads up. You might get an email from me, Diana Moffett, Local Government Law Group. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Diana. Thank you for the question. LOC will get back to you as soon as we can about your questions on 4005.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm pausing to see if there's any more questions. I'm not seeing any in the QA feature or any additional hands. I want to thank you all for being here and joining us today. We have just a couple more of these updates. We look forward to giving those to you and getting the legislature to a place where they adjourn sine die, which means adjourn without a date, and end the 2026 legislative session. So we're past the halfway mark. We're heading to there very quickly, and we look forward to giving you additional updates as we get there. Thanks so much for being here.